السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله يا رسول الله.
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for tuning in this beautiful Saturday morning, the 5th of August. Beautiful month, both in the Islamic calendar and the Gregorian calendar. It is always a beautiful time to spend with you on The Other Woman here on Lights Radio, reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria to the world. I'm not alone on the show today, not my regular crew, but a beautiful sweetheart is joining us today to lend a voice to our discussion of today. I'm so sorry we're just starting off. I had a personal challenge, and I hope and pray that you can forgive me. Right. Today we're looking at something interesting. It's about education, but I'm not going into deep waters because I am not Dr. Olubumi Kazim, for example. But we're going to touch on something from the perspective that affects you and me, especially if you've been through secondary school. And what am I talking about? Should your children or ward be going to boarding or day school? That's what we're looking at today. And that's coming on the back of a video that circulated sometime earlier this year. It was in the southeastern part of Nigeria where 61 students of a certain public school had something that looked like a snake bite. However, it turned out upon investigation that it wasn't a snake bite, but an initiation into a cult. Yes, you heard right. Cultism. Catch them young. Primary school and secondary school students were on a rampage to initiate and recruit their fellow peer group members into this secret cult. Now, does that put shivers through your spine? Does it make you think, I don't enter one chance. My child is in boarding school. Should I go straight up and withdraw my child from the boarding school? Should I keep all the should I not, whatever you're going through? It's a real fear. And so I'm being joined by Dr. Aziza Amoloye Adebayo. She's an associate professor and HOD Department of Islamic Law, Faculty of Law, University of Ilorin here in Nigeria, Kwara State. She's also the coordinator at the University of Ilorin Muslim Ladies Circle. And who better to shred this topic with me, if not her? I'm waiting for the rest of my crew to join in. Hadia Wasila, I don't know if I announced here, she helped us to grow our ummah. Mashallah, tabarakallah. She brought in a beautiful human being to the world some weeks back, and so she's still, nursing herself back to strength, and so she'll be joining us back bi'idhnillah. She's listening right now. She's smiling. You know that her funny smile, that her smile like I'm now tutti berry. That kind of that smile in here. I'm sure she has it on right now. But anywho, she'll be joining us when she's back on her feet. I'm still waiting for Aisha that has gone into thin air. She disappeared into thin air forever. We're waiting for her to get back. Dr. Adeyemi, Habibu Adeyemi also. I will have a host of our other crew members, but they're not here today. If they do join us, mashallah tabarakallah. If not, we're still going to have a beautiful show. Dr. Aziza, she full ground brekete. Haja, say salam to our audience. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Aziza.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Mashallah tabarakallah. Yes, it's beautiful to have you. Wa antum fi jazakumullahu khairan. Let's just get started. So, did you go to a boarding school yourself?
No, I didn't.
I was almost going to say, it's a no-brainer. We all went to boarding school. But yes, so what was it for you?
Yeah, my secondary school was Queen Elizabeth School, University of Ilorin.
Okay.
Yes, of course, there are facilities, boarding facilities. And a number of my friends were boarders, but I was never one.
Okay. Did you
Yes, because
ever like silently, wish you could spend a day in the boarding school?
well, I suppose mm, maybe yes, maybe no, because maybe I didn't really reflect too much. I
Okay.
could remember in the junior years days. I mean, when your friends would come with tales and
Tales of war, isn't it? It was
yes,
always
you,
tales of
you
war.
would,
One bullying
yes,
or the
yes,
other.
yes, yes, yes. So you'd be happy that.
You're a day
But I
student.
suppose then when we're in the senior classes, you know, and you then watch house assemblies, you know, aha. So perhaps on the other hand, you then and the sense of discipline at times. So I suppose at times you may be green with envy once or twice, yes, but so it's a bit here and not also here. I don't know, but I just know I knew that I felt very lucky.
Okay.
Just 1 to 3, and sometimes in SS3, I was thinking perhaps it would be nice to have had the experience. Yes,
Indeed. And so you not going through your kids, is it an option? Is a boarding school facility on the table for them? Are they in boarding schools or it's a no
no,
no?
no, no, no.
What informed that decision? You know it's like a confirmed Maro, Matiero. No, 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 don't think about it. What
Well, I
led, yeah.
suppose I remember that. Well, I don't know how old I have to be, to use the cliche during our days.
You're old enough, mama. You are on this with your full chest during our days. If you know this advert that I'm about to play, if you know this jingle, Tamo, Kowaso, Tamo, Kowaso, Mama, Grandma ni, excuse ma, Grandma ni, own that phrase with your full chest.
Because I know that despite the tales of wolves, the boarding school system that used to be, at least say late 70s, early 80s to early late 90s, to my mind, uncomparable to what's seen. And I use the word advisedly to be operative these days.
Okay.
And for example, you know, during those days, most of the schools were government schools, you know, and the I went to an only girls school, so please, uh, so my own experience is that we had house mistresses, we had matron, we had the principal. There was a very orderly, coherent, discipline structure, and you could almost find that the training was not only for the students; it would extend to parents at home, you know, regarding strict compliance with things that were expected, standards of behavior, regardless of what you were coming with from home. And I know a number of my friends, that would say that, thank God, Mama Khadija or Mama Aisha, I'm talking to our matrons, that there are trainings that their mothers received from those mamas and that made them turn out to be functional components of the society. So I would say that because of the kind of structure that we had then, and I'm not against private schools, I'm not against private establishment, but again, a number of them cannot run away from the effects of the commercialization of education, where they are not strong enough to rise above parents, expectations, even if they would go contrary to what the school would require in terms of structure, in terms of
And
order
value
and discipline.
system. And
Yes,
yeah,
yes, because
morals
they
and
do not want to
ethics.
lose patronage,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So you find that things aren't the way they ought to be. And there are situations where the facilities that you would expect may bring, less than desirable results. So I'm trying to be very, very careful, So I think I'll just, so that's my concern for now.
Okay.
That I think that the it's in my own experience, and if I would have control, I would rather have my children with me
Okay.
in the formative years now,
Okay.
because of the experiences of today, not against the entire body system. Because I had a stint when I was in my years two, and Form 1 had a camp for girls for 2 weeks. So I experienced the boarding experience. It was okay, it was fine. We had mummies away from home, we had grandmas away from home, and they ensured that we prayed, we had sports, we did things that were expected, and so on and so forth. But can we really say that we have the same structure
Today.
as we had then?
Okay.
Thank you.
Fair enough. So let me put myself on the spot. I went to a boarding school from my GSS1 to SS3. Incidentally, during my SS3, I had a taste of day life, and so if I compared, obviously being in senior school, there was the upper hand to be a boarding student. There was a lot of perks that came with being a boarding student that's supposed to be a day student, right? So honestly, so looking at my experiences in school, I do feel that the structure did not fully support junior students. Quite a number of the teachers kept their ears close to the ground when it came to cases of bullying. But we had, or well, I went to a federal government girls' college. I experienced mass bullying. So it was not the case of there were those cases of you being singled out for being bullied by seniors, being oppressed, being obtained, and all of that. But then there was the mass bullying where it was just a case of I want to show you that I'm in charge. And I still remember a few of those seniors by their names and surnames right now. And I can reel out their names, but subhanAllah, let me just free them. But then, so the bitter pill is you wonder, actually, if just as one, for example, you have a blend of all sorts of children. Like, and I say children because it's worse these days where you're having an 8-year-old in GSS1, you're having a 7-year-old in GSS1 because they've had double promotions in primary school. And so they are unripe for secondary school, be that as it may, but here they are in boarding school. And so you have those with with a 12-year-old girl in the same class. The 12-year-old girl has already experienced menstrual period. She already knows what menstrual cycle is. This 8-year-old girl is yet to experience it. And when she will experience it, she will experience it on a day she's just at the dining hall. She'll just stand up and her gown is stained. And God help her if she had absolutely no pre-knowledge of this. No one had talked to her about it, and it would be a day of shame, a shame she would live with for the rest of her life, because she'll be shamed in the dining, except if the first person that sees it is a reasonable and sensible person that doesn't want to chase clouds, and so the person quickly calls her and tells her and helps her out. But God help her if it was seen by a random person. Then imagine the case of that being happening in a mixed school. So in the dining hall she's stained, and that's her first encounter with menstrual cycle, and the whole list goes on. So I don't think any school is fully prepared until we streamline the age of entry into JSS1. I don't think any school out there, boarding facility, private or public, is well equipped to handle those underage that come in. At the end of the day, they are left to the whims and caprices of the person in charge, the senior in charge of the hostel, who herself has her own, personal, reflections and personal ideologies and personal what have you, and so on and so forth. Now, that said, I can't even imagine what the case is now. Then we didn't have phones, right? We didn't have mobile phones. Now the internet is crazy. There's just a lot of learnings out there. In my time, I'm talking about the 80s, there was lesbianism in my secondary school. We had seniors that were full-fledged couples, and it wasn't hidden. Everybody knew that these two were a couple, right?
Mm.
That was in the 80s. There was lesbianism. What would we talk about now with LGBTQMPSZF, in your face, legitimized, legalized, not here in Nigeria, but it's online, and we have those silent indoctrinations going on. So, are we really safe? Is the question. Now, back to the video that actually led to this conversation. This snake bite thing, it would have been easier for the boarding students to carry on. But the day students were also fingered in that video. If you saw it, some boarding, some day students the snake bite, because at the end of the day, it was a recruitment galore. Whoever recruited the most number of students. So, can we say that it's necessarily a lose thing for the boarding students? But the day students were also affected. So, how are we faring now? Parents, teachers, the educational system, how are we faring now? What are we doing? What legacies can we fall back on for the current trend that is going now? How can we better protect these children? What are we supposed to be doing that we're not doing? I mean, we are not in the educational sector, so it's us talking as parents more than anything else right now.
Hmm. Well, I think at this point, perhaps we need to understand, why do we even need boarding facilities in the first place in some schools,
Okay.
and how did everything, how did it all start?
Okay.
Well, I would say that, in certain situations or in some individual circumstances, boarding facilities may be the best option, because the entire educational system, it's an offshoot of trying to, sort of, what's the word, to supplement parental efforts
Mm-hmm.
in the training of a child
Mm-hmm.
to be a functional component of the society.
True.
So, teachers, lecturers, trainers are sort of like parents to children
Mm.
outside of the home.
Mm.
So, you know, and if you would look at things, that the correct use of something cannot be gauged from its abuse.
Very true.
What is supposed to happen on boarding facilities is to simulate exactly what would happen at home, or something better.
Mm.
So if the experience on the boarding facilities would be better than the experience that one would have at home, you know, there shouldn't be any problem.
True.
What is problematic is where anywhere is unsafe
Mm.
and is not in the best interest of the child in question.
Okay.
Because the governing principle is always that the best interest of the child.
Very
And that's the
true.
position of the law under the Child Rights Act. Any decision you want to make must always be in the best interest of
Of
that
the
child.
child. True.
Yes. So now I'm glad you asked the question, not as a question that isolates certain segments of the society as those responsible.
Mm.
There is a collective responsibility.
Mm.
We must, jointly look at the problem, and then jointly, you know, engage with ourselves in finding solutions.
I'm sorry to cut. Let me quickly
Yes,
digress.
yes,
Parent
please.
teachers associations. Do you think they are doing enough, or shall I put you on the spot? Are you active? Have you ever been active in any PTA meetings? Have you been an executive of PTAs? How effective are PTAs in redressing or addressing this kind of issues that we're raising right now?
Well, I would say that a lot of PT associations, our parents are very, very active. And personally, I would say, when my son started out in a school and was one of the pioneer, you know, set for the school. And not only was I part of the caretaker committee, I later on metamorphosed into the vice chairman for the association. And I served in one capacity or the other, at least for close to 5 years. And I know that we had a very active PTA association, and that provided lots of insights into certain situations where, when you have schools that are private, that, they're struggling, to sort of establish a particular curriculum in a particular, based on a particular ideology, and how often you may have, uh, you know, perhaps sentiments or different ideological expectations from parents, and how this at times seems to rub off each other in a very negative way. And I come with a lot of that when I speak about the problem of the private school system, because the educational system should actually tower. There should be the assumption of this person is a professional, and if they are professional, they should know better. Not because they are better, but because they've undergone
A
a
certain
training,
training, yeah.
yes, that is expected to better educate their intellect, to be able to provide advice to others.
True.
So if that is the case,
Yeah.
it means then that parents should go to school expecting also to be guided.
Indeed.
Not because the teachers are better,
But
but
because
because
that is their field, that's their specialty, that's
skills,
a specialization. So we
their
expect
specialization.
from them. True.
And that is why you would trust your children and your word in
Into their
that care.
hands.
Yes.
Very true.
And the same way, the teachers would also respect the time that the children will spend with parents.
True. True.
And of course, because as a mother or a father, your job is also to do your child better with their, their non-social self,
Yeah.
the private self, to be able to also give an indication of where help may be needed to the teachers that are interacting with their public, side. Aha. Now, yes, I would say in some situations, the PTA has been very, very active in ensuring that the old schools are accountable. But I do also know that in certain situations, they can also be very, very intrusive when particularly some parents are trying to pursue some self-serving goals. I know of some schools, for instance, that would refuse to give certificate of attendance to pupils that have not completed the primary school education, having left in primary 3 or 4 to, sit for the common entrance examination and proceed to secondary school ill prepared, as you mentioned, at ages 8, 9, and so on and so forth. And I've known about schools. I'm saying that I know about schools that are trying to be firm in ensuring compliance. But I do know that some parents act as pressure groups to get the schools to shift ground, to give certificates of completion. I'm speaking from experience, where a school would only certify that this child stayed with us for 3 years or 4, and went on to sit for the common entrance examination, and that would be fair. But I've been in situations where even executives of PTAs would say no, they should give certificate of completion of primary education, contrary to the assessment of the head teacher. And where schools are not strong enough to assert their position, if they fear they're going to lose patronage, they cave in. So it's always not a side of the coin. It's always the two sides of the coin, that we should be alive to our responsibilities. And I think often we're not really sure or clear what the overall goal is in the training of a particular child.
Yeah. So let
Is
me
it in interest? Yes, please.
No, please let me I'll let you land. Is it in interest of
Yes.
please land?
Of that child, the child taken for who they are, not as compared to others and not in competition to any other person, including parents' expectation.
Hmm.
Their parental expectation.
Absolutely.
There is the reality of who we all are,
True.
and we must always face those realities. It's legitimate to have expectations,
True.
but we must always conduct reality checks.
Hmm.
Are my expectations fair or
Hmm.
even justified
Hmm.
in the particular instance of this child?
Hmm.
But at times, there are judgments that are made not for the interest of the child in question, but to satisfy certain expectations,
Right.
maybe of parents, at times even of teachers or of the schools themselves,
Right.
you know. So, as you've said, that's why I like the way you started out that it's all hands on deck
True.
situation.
Yeah.
We can't pass the ball to a ball of responsibility of blame to
Hmm.
anyone.
Hmm.
I think it's a collective responsibility on the
Right.
part of schools to be firm, on
Right.
the part of parents to also be firm.
Right.
You understand? Because as you were saying, I wouldn't say that we shouldn't have the boarding facilities.
Hmm.
I know of a situation where there was a child. My school, my children attend a private school, yes,
Hmm.
and they have boarding facilities.
Hmm.
And I could remember that, yes, I'm not an executive yet,
Hmm.
but I do attend PTA meetings.
Okay.
And I try to be very active, a carryover from when my children, the primary school they were coming from, now they're in secondary school.
Hmm.
So I remember seeing a child of 2 years, and I asked, and they said she was in boarding house, primary.
What?
And yes, and I immediately ran to the proprietor and like, why on earth would we have facilities in this school? And when I got the background, I saw
Hmm.
that it was actually the best decision in the
Subhanallah.
circumstance
Hmm.
because they then had like a three-layer
Hmm.
level of care.
Hmm.
They have a nursing mother
Hmm.
who acts like their mother,
Hmm.
and they have like a matron who is like a grandma, and they
Hmm.
all live together in
Hmm.
a sort of a flat,
Hmm.
not a kind of a hostel setup,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
because the child was an orphan or is an
Oh.
orphan,
Oh. Oh.
and because of that situation was in an abusive relationship,
Hmm.
you know, an uncle who took up her care
Hmm.
after she lost both her parents
Subhanallah.
now
Hmm.
approached the proprietor
Hmm.
that the child seemed to be facing abuse from his spouse
Hmm.
and his
Hmm.
children, and he wanted a safe place. So there would always have such kinds of situation.
Indeed.
So in that
Fair enough.
situation, the boarding facility is actually the best option.
Fair enough. I
So I
see that
think
loud and clear.
I don't know
So, so,
much.
so
Let me
because
allow.
you've indulged me to put you on the spot, I want to put you on the spot again, and that's because I'm going to create two scenarios, and I want you to reflect with me. I love the background that you came from, and may Allah bless Haja Wasila for digging you out from wherever you were hiding the whole time. We've needed you on the show a few times in the past, but so I'm going to hold on tight. I'm going to hold on tight to you, going forward. So yeah, I want to put you on the spot for two things. Because you've been active on PTA in the past, what would you do on the first instance this kind of case is brought to you, this initiation, the snake bite thing, the first time you hear about it, say you get it as maybe your child mentioned it to you at home, and then it then falls as part of the agenda for the PTA meeting, for example. Maybe there's an emergency meeting, and what would be your contribution to that PTA? How would you direct, or if you were the chairman of the PTA, for example, and you listen to different, what would be your direction on this kind of issue coming to limelight? How would you nip it in the bud? Now it's gone as far as spreading. It's gone a cancer in that school because 61 students. What kind of student body can they have that 61 of them already initiated into that cult? So, what would be your direction on how to tackle that issue? The second one is you get wing of an LGBTQ related issue where the kids learn from their parents. Maybe you have a child who has double daddies or double mommies or something like that. That comes up at the PTA meeting. How would you address such issue? The school is a mix of both boarding and day, and this child in question that is raising it happens to be a day student but has a lot of boarding students and is training them, recruiting them for this LGBTQ community. How would you address these two issues, ma'am? Yeah. I
Well,
warned you. I said I was going to put you on the spot. Right.
well, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin. I suppose that, think about.
Mm,
I try not to be exclusive, like not to make people feel a sense of isolation from me.
mm,
But I try to set in every leadership position. I try to set it out quite early on that I'm sorry, I'm a Muslim.
mm.
I'm sorry is not an apology.
Yeah.
It's but under my sentiments, I have no other sentiment except Islamic sentiment.
That's my value system and that's my belief and that's what reflects in all that I do, right? So you make it very clear,
Yes,
upfront.
yes, upfront.
Yeah.
So if we're speaking outside of religion,
Right.
okay, so I am able to again engage
Right.
to the extent that that sentiment would allow.
Okay.
And I also say that in this, there's a reason why I feel that that needs to be set out quite early so that I don't come across as judgmental, you know,
Mm,
because it's not very, very good to be,
mm,
you know.
mm,
But again, when you already say that there's an objective standard that we strive to live by,
mm,
and we must always try to refract any situation
mm.
from that objective standard. So this
Right.
is not me,
Right.
but that is just my life. Now, in the first situation, I think I've even had a worse case that I would rather not mention because it involved students.
Right.
I watched the video. I remember starting in the first minute. I was very appalled. I was frightened.
Mm,
I thought it was actually a snake bite,
mm,
and I remember that my head went hot for
mm.
the first. Then by the time I got to the end of the video, I saw that it was actually, the children who had been very, very creative,
Yeah. Yeah.
in trying to. So, so my mortification, the level of mortification reduced,
Mm,
and I was able to breathe a bit more
mm,
easily.
mm,
And
mm.
I knew that the first question that came to my mind was, it must have started from somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'll be interested in where that started from.
Right.
But again, I saw that as a situation of children trying to be ingenious,
Mm.
you know, trying to sort of, what is the word to use? Is escaping me now. But what am I saying? There are 61 students
Yes.
initiated already.
Yes.
So if that would come to the PTA,
Yeah.
I would think the best way to go about it is to be as open as possible.
Okay.
I know that in some situations, particularly in privately owned schools, there are things that would come to the table of the PTA schools.
Mm,
Maybe a complaint from parents,
mm,
an observation by teacher.
mm.
And I told you we've had series, and the school management will plea for secrecy. You know,
Mm.
let's sweep as much of it
Under the
that we can
carpet.
sweep under the carpet.
Wow.
Now, not there are certain situations that they will fear loss of patronage.
Mm,
There are certain situations that may be out of a genuine concern
mm,
for the identity, and
mm,
privacy
mm.
of
The
the
parties
people involved
concerned. Yeah.
being children,
Yeah.
so that they don't carry a permanent blemish.
True.
You know,
True. Fair
they're only
enough.
children for a period in their life.
True.
They're going to grow up to become adults, and once their reputation is scared for life.
You're right.
So that's another consideration. But
Interesting.
you have to balance all these considerations against the gains, and the wins of being open.
Mm,
And those are tough decisions. So in everything, the sincerity to Allah's cause is what will then guide, as I've found. Because that allows you to pick a decision that best serves all concerned while you are not being unjust to anyone. So what is the justice of the situation? This number, this large crowd, I would say there's need to be as open as possible because it's gone on for a long time.
Indeed.
And some of those children had gone on to even initiate
Their siblings,
some of their siblings at home.
cousins.
And
They're not even
cousins.
in that school. You're right. You're right.
You understand? But again, it's not for parents to begin to come and say we're going to pull our children and we run away somewhere. As Yorubas would say,
Are you going
best
to where
way-
there is no God? Where is there a
Best
place
way-
where there's no God, where God can't see you? Subhanallah.
you can't cover the sky with your 2 palms. You better deal with whatever situations that you would have.
Interesting.
What do you know that is happening that is graver elsewhere? So, hands-on approach, facing the situation and ensuring no reoccurrence, as long as we are all sincere.
Right.
So in the second situation of LGTB, I mean, it's quite clear what is permitted and what is not
Right.
in Islam.
Right.
But as outside of that, Islam also discourages spying on people unnecessarily,
True.
taking apart the
Again,
lives,
you're raising the balance, getting the balance, finding the balance.
yes. Finding the balance. So in that kind of situation, it would be different if it was faith-based or not. If it wasn't, I mean, at the university level, I've interacted with a student, for instance. I teach principles of Islamic law to non-Islamic law students.
Yes.
So at times there are non-adherents of Islamic faith.
True.
They have to also accommodate.
True.
So they know heads on what my Islamic sentiments are. But outside of that, I also allow them to know that Islam accords you your privacy. So far, you do not want us to engage in public. You can live your private life the way you want to live. So does that answer the question?
Absolutely nails it it nails the coffin. You've sealed that coffin for good. It's a beautiful one.
Thank you very much.
Haja Aziza, Dr. Aziza, it's an absolute pleasure that you agreed to do this for us at the shortest possible notice. We are out of time. However, one thing that is guaranteed, I'm guaranteeing my audience, Haja Aziza is coming back. In fact, it shall be permanent in our life. It shall be permanent. We have her locked down with us as our team, and we can always call on her. Because the fluidity of her thoughts and the exposure that she's garnered over time is very, very.
Astaghfirullah, my sister.
No,
I don't
it's
think you
germane.
borrowed traps.
It's germane. No, the way the exposition you've given to the talk. If I had my own premonitions when I was coming, I had my biases and I had my thoughts. If I had the way I was going to direct the conversation, but subhanallah, because I'm unscripted, I love the fact that it's unscripted, and so I didn't even prep you before, and so the genuine responses, it's what it is. That's what we need, and because people really need help, right? So those that'll be watching this after, I'll be reflecting, I'll be thinking, I didn't think of it this way. That's a thought, subhanallah. So jazakumullah khairan, barakallahu fi. May Allah make this way heavy on your scale of good deeds and forgive whatever errors we have committed in this broadcast. Jazakumullah khairan. We'll be off now and be in touch again. Beautiful topics lay ahead of us in the weeks to come on The Other Woman. Until next week when we come your way again, inshallah ta'ala, stay blessed. Ma'asalam.
MashaAllah, ma'asalam.
Islam fi amanillah.
Sister Amina, on a personal level.
الحب في القلب اشتياق، ده الحب بلسم كل داء، وانا يا نبي مليان حنان ما يحسوش غير اللي ده. الحب في القلب اشتياق، ده الحب بلسم كل داء، وانا يا نبي مليان حنان ما يحسوش الصلاة، صلوا يزيد الشوق صلة، ده حبيبي بيرد السلام، والمولى بيزيد الصلاة. صلوا عليه أفضل صلاة، صلوا يزيد الشوق صلة، ده حبيبي